Hey, what's up, everybody? First off, I just wanted to say thank you for all the conversations and attention and support around that Battleground Blitz tier list video. That was really unexpected, and I just wanted to say thanks for that. I guess it is tier list season after all, so the only natural course of action is for me to move on to the arena tier list. We are going to use twos, threes, and shuffle. You can take all three of those into consideration, but really we're going to lean heavily on threes and solo shuffle. Threes because it has the best rewards, and solo shuffle because it's the most popular, right? So I think that makes sense. As always, in the comments right down below, let me know if you have any thoughts, concerns, ideas. Move a spec up a tier, move a spec down a tier, anything that you can think of that I personally missed, and I will listen to you. The conversation was awesome in the last video, and I can't wait to read the comments from this one. I'll do my absolute best. But there's a lot of specs in this game these days, so we'll give it a shot. First of all, we're going to get rid of the tanks. This time, unlike the Battleground Blitz video, unfortunately, I'm not going to order them. Tanks are extremely underplayed in solo shuffle. The cutoffs are always very, very low. And while there is certainly an order to how valuable these tanks are in solo shuffle, I won't be the one giving you that order, unfortunately. I am sorry. So we are going to have the tank tier. And if anything, you know, as the season goes on, if any of these tanks start to become oppressive, maybe I'll have to give that another look. But for now, we're just going to make a tanks tier. All right, so starting off at the very top left here, we got Frosty K, and I always overrate this, call it optimism, call it anti-bias, call it whatever, but this time I'm not going to do that. Frosty K is really fun to play, and the rework made the rotation extremely fluid. You have good double grip utility with an AoE blind into an AoE stun into a silence. I mean, that's a really, really powerful go. And you've got some weaknesses, right? You don't have any spammable CC. Your burst damage is not as oppressive as it once was. Your out of pillar sustain is good, but not terrifying, and you don't have a mortal strike to back that up, so you're at the mercy of your solo shuffle teammate. Losing 40-yard range grip or streng kind of hurts for sure. 40-yard range grip was very oppressive for healers to not really be able to avoid the go and nobody to be able to get out of it very easily, because you could always max range grip their max range ability, unless they were like Boomkin or Hunter had like 45-yard range, but they'd have to stay that max distance at all times. So that is a big deal. Their PvP talents leave a lot to be desired. Delirium might still not work on Evoker abilities. Streng replaces Asphyx, which is now a choice node with your 40-yard range grip, like I said. And Shroud of Winter, I mean, you have things like Rotten Decay or whatever. I don't even care to know the name of it still because it's so meaningless. Shroud of Winter, Bitter Chill, these things are a little underwhelming. So you are good, and the rework makes you extremely fluid, but I think it needs a little bit of number tuning to really be one of the top dog specs, and maybe we get that because new expansions are a good time for new numbers. So we'll take a look. Unholy, if this was pre-patch, would be quad S tier. Thankfully, for people who are worried about Unholy going live like that, it is nerfed heavily in beta, 20 to 30% almost every ability. So that is a big deal when you take every single ability of a spec and bring it way down. And it needed that. It was like doing the next expansion level of damage, and we don't want that. But that did bring it in line. That said, it has a stackable Mortal Strike, ridiculous sustained damage, good unpeelable damage through dots and pets and Magus of the Dead and Raise A-Bomb. It has burst options with Putrefy, which is really cool. Unholy having spike damage gives it the on-demand pressure of Frost while still having all the toolkit of Unholy. And again, that's sustain plus double MS that you can apply with Soul Reaper triple Putrefy, which is going to be your burst window, is going to be very scary even post-nerf. So we'll make it a low S tier. Like, I'll put stuff in front of it if that helps you guys out. Again, if this was pre-patch, it would be the highest possible S tier. You'd have a God tier just for Unholy, and so you would have that for Devourer as well. But things are getting worked with in the beta as we speak, and one of the things that happened was Unholy got a lot of damage nerfs. So again, justified, but still probably a low S tier spec. Havoc is hard to place. With the new spec taking some of the attention away, I think it's still got mobility, utility, double stun, Imprison, AoE Mortal Strike. These are tools that are generally very valuable in solo shuffle, especially. You have sticking power, you have oozing damage, which eventually ramps up with dampening and Mortal Strike and becomes hard to heal. You have good CC, so you can put, not fantastic CC, you don't have spammable CC, but stun, fear, imprison. Generally good tools, although I think nowadays it's actually just stun, imprison, fear. That bottom node right below the AoE stun, I think, increases the stun's duration on the primary target. So you have a big stun, maybe imprison and fear, which is not too oppressive, so definitely not an S tier spec. But again, they have the mobility to catch up with people. They still have tools like reverse magic, and their damage profile is very applicable to solo shuffle. You can kind of always do damage, and you can always apply your Mortal Strike, allowing you to eventually find a kill somewhere. So I think low A. Again, this is going to be a low A, so I'll put stuff in front of it. But that seems like a good spot. I'll put Devour. Man, it doesn't have a Mortal Strike, but it has a damage profile that's very scary. Right now, again, pre-patch is quad, septuple, sextuple, octuple, S tier. If any of those actually mean anything, it is completely broken in pre-patch is what I'm trying to say. But it got a bunch of nerfs to that entire the thing that's one-shotting you in every solo shuffle that you play, and you're like, holy cow, I'm not even going to play this expansion. Don't worry, that's all gone. They nerfed like the that hero talent that gives you the big burst effect, Void Surge, by like 50%, and then a couple of the other mechanics around it by 25 or 30%. So it will go from literally one-shotting you to not doing that, which is great. But it still has a damage profile that's very bursty and has a lot of potential for like this Void Ascension, like, oh my god, that's unhealable, kind of like the Devastation, range damage during Dragon Rage, rage damage during Ascended form for Devourer. It really feels like it could be just spiky and tough to deal with. You can't kite range damage. It's instant casts. It's not kickable because of a PvP talent that you got. There's just a lot of good going on here. Again, mobile. It could have if it runs the other hero talent set now, because the what is it called? Void Scarred, whatever that thing is nerfed. You could use the other one and have 3 charges of its targeted blink, which is really nice sticking power, especially since you have so much range damage. You can get away, you can come in. Your CC toolkit would be the same then as Havoc, and you just lack that Mortal Strike. But that didn't stop Dev from being very, very powerful. So I have high hopes for this spec, but we'll see. Boomy kept, this is one of the most like unpruned specs. It kept almost every tool it had. And then added a way to use your Eclipse manually. So Eclipse is a manual mechanic that now gives you damage buffs to certain abilities that you click on your bar for the first time in forever, I think. It's never been like that. Eclipse has always been kind of a currency, a resource, rather, that you managed. Boomkin still has good spammable CC and rot damage, and it has much more survivability now with the new version of Heart of the Wild. You can do that in bear form. I heard a lot of good things from Supa about how Boomkin plays. He's a big Boomkin guy, and that's generally a good sign. So I think a combination of decent mobility, shifting slows, the same crowd control you've already had in an unpruned damage profile means you probably have access to a lot of win conditions, and they were always good at kiting, rotting, and getting clones to peel things until you eventually found a win in solo shuffle. Their one weakness is generally when they are the target, like, fodder, a punching bag. And from what I've heard, again, I have not played every single spec at 3K MMR in beta, so I had to look at some other people, do some research on very good Boomkin players saying, hey, this has probably got some decent self-sustain. Okay, then I'll give it an A tier. Feral doesn't quite make the cut, I don't think. It still lacks the ability to compete with, spoiler, Sub-Rogue in the I'm a stealthy melee department. It has a lot of rot pressure that Sub-Rogue doesn't have right now, but sometimes in a Season 1, that's not really your win condition, as a lot of specs in a Season 1 are sometimes able, with lower health pools, to 100 to 0 people. We'll see how much of the pacing of Midnight reflects the pacing of other expansions. History rhymes, maybe, doesn't repeat. But you know, I'm not so sure that there's not better options for both single target burst and AoE rot. I feel like Unholy's AoE rot or Aflock has a really cool new toolkit that I can't wait to talk about. Kind of trump. Feral just feels like it's doing what other specs do, but slightly worse. It does have Cyclone still, which is fantastic CC, but it's different than a Boomkin just, you know, having 45-yard range on all of its abilities, swapping clones around and pressing Star Surge, right? You don't really quite have that toolkit to get the value out of it. But again, this is one that I had to defer some research to other players. I mean, I guess that's what I should be doing, due diligence anyway. And there wasn't a lot of hype around Feral. Not a lot of changes for it. Still has that tear, open wounds, and AoE rip. So you can, again, rot things, but they have to be right on top of you. So you're going to do really well into maybe things with a lot of pets feeding you a ton of AoE damage that you could use for procs, and then kill all their pets, which makes them do less damage. But, you know, there's a bunch of casters that seem like they're going to be decent, and some melee that feel like they would do a great job killing a cat form feral in a stun. We'll see. Nothing too remarkable here, so I've seen and heard. Our Druid, let's put this at the top because I think our Druid's throughput is amazing right now. It does have that, you know, get into tree form by pressing your rotational abilities. I think it's Swift Mend a bunch of time, which allows you to have instant cast heals, which are really good early in a season when you don't have a lot of secondary stats allowing you to get big casts off. You would much rather have a form that gives you a lot of instant throughput, which our Druid of course has. It does have something I really want to talk about, brand new to Midnight, which is a PvP talent. At least I never saw it. It is Guardian, Forest Guardian. Yeah, Forest Guardian. That's got to be it. And it means while you're doing your rotation, you get buffs to your healing rotation. So I'm talking while you're doing your damage rotation, like Wrath, Starfire, combo point spenders. I think Surge is in there too. You get healing over time buffs and something else. Somebody remind me what the first, there's two little paragraphs there, two little statements. And the second one is 20% more effectiveness on your healing over time abilities. And the first one, you get yet another benefit from using like Wrath and Starfire. So what they're effectively trying to do here is add offensive pressure to our Druid and really allow it to be like an actual shapeshifter like it was maybe, geez, I don't know, in Wrath. What are we talking, 15 years ago? It wants to lean into that playstyle, which is cool because there's a lot of pruning going on right now. I mean, I know this isn't the most fun tier list. It's the most powerful tier list, but I think there is going to be some value to playing that if the pacing in such a way is that you can actually min-max both your healing and output, and then they synergize with each other. They complement each other. You're doing more damage, getting you more hot effects, which keeps your guys alive, which allows you to do more damage, which makes them play on the defensive, which keeps your guys alive, and you can just keep snowballing like that. You know, Void Weaver last season, I know that our Druid is nothing like Void Weaver, but we have an example of a spec that can get pressure and healing at the same time, getting oppressive. Now, I put it in A because that's way more likely for Void Weaver Disc Priest to be able to do than our Druid. But that's a cool PvP talent, and it still retains all of its tree form throughput, hots, nice cooldowns, iron bark, good self-sustain, phenomenal CC, good mobility. You know, spammable clone on a healer is, wow, what a tool. So high A, very highest A. That's why I put it all the way to the left here. This might be a cop-out from me. AUG, ever since its opening, its debut season, when they realized, especially in PvP, it can just play with anything and be good because its whole point is to buff whatever it's playing with. So if it's playing with something good, then it is good, right? Isn't that the problem? If you heavily juice the player you're playing with, people are going to play good specs, and AUG is going to be good because you're going to be playing with somebody who's playing a good spec, and you make their good spec even better, right? So AUG's best value is playing with good specs, and people are always going to play the good specs, right? That's the whole point. So I think ever since then, AUG has been very underwhelming. Certainly the representation, the player base has not really played much of it anymore. It was up and down in War Within. It was very down at the end of Dragonflight, and I think pretty down at the end of War Within. So I'm doing a little bit of a cop-out because that's just, you know, overall sentiment. Everything changes in every new expansion. I didn't see anything that looked to be exceptional, and they're always keeping the buffs tuned back in a PvP environment. So anytime the juice that you give to your teammate is ever too oppressive, they just throw PvP modifiers on that, bada boom. It's no longer like that. So I don't really think, especially with how many specs there are in the game, from a PvP perspective, they ever really want AUG to be good. It's like that old quote where they said, "We'd rather you not play demo," which is a terrible quote, right? But now it might actually make sense. They probably would rather you don't actually play Augment in PvP specifically. So a cop-out from me, but I'm standing by it. Dev, let's probably start ordering these a little better. This is probably what I would do. Dev is great mobility. It now has 2 charges of Deep Breath. Well, it can use one and then it can use another within a certain amount of time, which I think is like 15 to 18 seconds. So not quite 2 charges, but it can AoE stun you and then AoE stun you again. Very, very powerful with them pulling back on some of the spam stuns in the games, specifically Cheap Shot. Going from infinity stuns to 2 charges is a big deal. That will allow you to be the AoE stunner that you wish to be. And during Dragon Rage, having them all AoE stunned twice is going to be a lot of damage. Remember, the second AoE stun is going to be the one that fully DRs it. So you have to be careful with it. But that's a pseudo stun. That during a Dragon Rage burst is going to cut off one of the heals that their healer desperately needs to get off. You still have great single target damage. You still have double wall. You're still very, very slippery with the hover immunity PvP taunt, which is still in the game. By the way, you can set up 2 divide and conquer lava walls. For anybody who doesn't know what the heck I just said, there's a PvP talent that makes it when you deep breath and fly over and use your AoE stun, you put up 2 walls on either side of your flight path, which is line of sight. Like they're actual walls. They're walls for your healer, but if you're the one doing the Dragon Rage go, it's also line of their healer. So if you set it up one way, they finagle their way into the wall, somebody kites out, and then you set up a different wall in a different way with a pseudo half stun coming in on your Dragon Range. I mean, the amount of LOS that you can put on the field is almost comical. I don't really know if they're ever going to do anything about that, but yes, you can put up 2 separate walls during that burst. And yeah, Devastation looks pretty cool. Prez, I've had a lot of people rate this pretty poorly. I'm not ready to do that yet. Double Verdant Embrace, nullifying Shroud with a PvP talent seems like it would be very, very good. That's 2 different CCs you can munch just by verdanting, which is part of your rotation. It's a pretty short cooldown as well, so you're going to be munching a lot of CCs randomly. You also have wall for silence protection against any pesky blanket silences. Shadow Priest DK. Especially with Unholy, potentially, using silence to pair with a heavy stun teammate like maybe Warrior, Windwalker. That stun silence, you can deal with that a little better by pre-walling. Very cool. You have Commune is now a PvP talent. Maybe that's why people are low on it. I don't know. That is a very, very key component of their ability to heal solo shuffle, because healing in CC, that's important. You're going to be CC'd a lot in this game. You still have Sleepwalk and what feels like very good throughput. You have good rebound healing, but that can be pretty scary because when people get low, they generally use a wall. And now if you had a rebound for them, you have no way of communicating that, especially with all the add-ons giving people less information than they already had. Solo Shuffle might be a little hectic, and letting people get low so you could rebound them back up might end up just having a lot of overlaps. So it could be that Prez feels uneasy to play with. Again, I really think double Verdant Embrace, double nullifying is going to be a big deal, munching so much CCs, because just like I said, if communication is not perfect, people are just going to be throwing out CCs left and right. They might lose major CC cooldowns just going into a nullifying shroud. So I'm not going to put it as low as I've seen it, but I will believe in the ability for people to recognize it's kind of hard to play with. I could say that. Not really my best way of saying that, but maybe that's good. We'll put it in the middle of B tier, so I'll keep moving things around. BM Hunter is boring, but probably really good. It is hard to judge because it has 4 abilities. It is certainly not a spec that I would put in S tier of the most fun to play, but it's got Stun Trap. It's got another stun. It's got single target damage and a powerful cooldown that increases all of its single target damage. It has relentless single target damage, and almost every effect it has is passive. So I don't really know how you would get out of that. Bleed damage is nearly impossible to get off of you because it can reapply it so easily. It's not very kiteable. It's got all of those pets that come out of the woodworks. There's no real way to get the damage off of you, and it does very well into some of the casters that will be trying to kite. So, PHDK did well all of War Within. I don't see anything that would stop Hunter from playing well with a lot of the things that are going to be good. It provides the Mortal Strike. It provides great CC. It provides great single target pressure, and it's very difficult to get off of you. So unless the pets just die or something, which seems like something that has not been a problem for them in recent expansions, you can kind of bet on people playing this. Since it only has 3 buttons, they'll probably play it pretty effectively, which means there might be a lot of BM hunters just 1-2, 1-2, 1-2ing you to death. And there's not too many great peels, but we'll see if their throughput, it's all a numbers game, and some of this is just predictions, because at any time they could say, we increase the damage of kill command by 5 billion%, or we lower it by 50%, right? And that would change a lot, but hard to say that a spec with all the tools that it's always had, single target damage, CC, and Mortal Strike, will not still be good in a solo shuffle arena environment. Marksman kind of plays, we'll throw it in the middle of A so far. It kind of still wants to 100 to 0 somebody, but without the secondary stats like before, is rocking 50-60% mastery, the 30% verse still. It even has some crit for the crit damage mods. Marksman doesn't have all of those things now, which also makes it a little more sluggish to get that after the one shot goes out, which it still has. It still has a lot of upfront damage, but if it doesn't 100 to 0 in that damage, it feels like the overall throughput afterwards is going to be a little limited. It's not going to have that crazy range that it gets from having all the end of expansion mastery. It didn't lose too much besides just going into a new expansion. I don't recall Marksman being overwhelmingly oppressive in War Within Season 1, just really good. So that's exactly what I expect out of Midnight. Again, I looked through all the talents. I didn't see anything lost that would go to, utility. I think it lost some utility. Maybe high explosive trap is that one. So a knockback is removed. Hey, it's very useful to knock somebody back and then tar trap root them. If they're losing these things and some utility, maybe they will get slammed a little harder than they're used to. And without the counter pressure of an all-out one shot, maybe that makes them susceptible to getting counter pressured the whole game. So I could do this, or maybe even high B, but a class with a lot of damage that can do it at a range, has a Mortal Strike. I think we're okay with just kind of throwing it at the back of the A, especially since we're coming off of a season where it was 5 S tier. So, right, it was one of the best spec, maybe the best spec at the end of War Within. So I think dropping it down to low A is already, maybe even controversial enough. I'm going to put Survival in S tier. I think it has all the tools for success. The Midnight build, to some people, is a letdown. I did not play Survival, so to me it looks awesome. But again, I will defer to Survival players saying it's not their favorite version because they've been playing it since it was born. I have not, and what it has is 2 charges of this cool AoE explosive fire grenade that leaves a patch of fire on the ground, does a huge chunk of fire damage. Elemental damage is always good. Mixed damage is always good in arena because you can start avoiding various, you don't want to go all into physical because then you just get walled off by armor and other physical damage mitigation. So it's nice to have that fire damage, arcane damage, nature damage that Survival has. So it has 2 charges of that, it has 2 charges of Wild Bomb, and these things can reset the cooldown of this AoE shotgun channel, which does huge upfront damage. Just boom, shotgun hit, shotgun hit, shotgun hit, shotgun hit. It's AoE damage, it's a channel, it's very difficult to deal with because it's got a nice range, so he can position himself accordingly. And all of this rotation kind of feeds into each other. So you have a constant source of AoE damage, AoE targeted damage, single target damage, and then AoE bombs. You've got your kill command still that has multiple charges that, again, just rotate through this engine that you're building, right? It's a really nice engine. And again, I feel for Survival players who have apparently played much cooler versions of Survival than this. Again, I haven't. So to me, it's like, wow, considering some of the pruning that we've seen, this looks pretty cool. But cool is not enough. It also does very, very good damage right now. Tuning can always change, but double charge of all your main abilities that all funnel into an engine that makes them keep recharging. You have AoE damage, you have AoE burst damage, you have single target damage, you have Immortal Strike, you have all the CC that BM has. I would actually put Survival over BM, by the way, and over Unholy. It has all the CC, right? You still have your stun trap, and that's how you win games. You have damage to range, you have damage up front, you can chase people down very easily. You can finish targets that are trying to kite. You just, that kind of hybridization right now, you're going to see a pattern that melee classes that can do range damage are going to be very, very good, because melee doesn't require as much secondary stats because they don't have casts, but they still want the ranged pressure because they don't want to get kited by the mobility bloat in the game right now. So you can see how they take a huge jump over Frost. Arcane, I'm putting lower than people have because I believe that one school and low secondary stats might hurt the spec. Arcane is generally pretty low rep as well, which means it's not going to get as much. With all the specs in this game, that actually kind of matters. There's not going to be as much, you know, testing and research as something like that's completely overplayed, like Marksman was last patch, where everybody in the game plays. And not that there's much to learn about one-shotting somebody 100 to 0, but you know what I mean. I'm putting it at the top of B tier. I've seen some people have a lot of love for this spec. It as well loses some things like Blast Wave. Shifting Power is gone from Mage, which is a cooldown reset that also does some damage. Nothing too crazy, but again, one school and low secondary stats makes me afraid of Arcane in the beginning of the expansion. Because it just means maybe they go you, right? So let's say, here's why. I know this is the Arcane tier, and now I'm going to be talking about other specs, but Survival, BM, and Unholy just go Arcane Mage, right? And now you're not really feeling like an A tier spec anymore, I would say, because if you can only have one school to cast on for damage and CC, Polymorph is the same school as your Arcane damage, of course, and you're getting railed, and you don't have a good way to peel pets, BM Hunter pets, Survival range damage, Unholy range damage, Unholy pets, right? It just feels, sorry, my neck is all messed up. I just had a bad posture for 32 years. That's my bad. Yeah, that's why I believe that it's going to be. Play it. Feel free. Play it in solo shuff. See how it goes. I'm going to move on to Mage so you guys don't think I think Mage is terrible, because I think Frost Mage actually looks really good. The reason I'm, spoiler, Fire Mage I don't think is very good, but Frost Mage has this new Shatter mechanic. So let's talk about something new again for a second here. The Shatter mechanic has a stacking up to 20 debuff that puts on them that can be spent by Ice Lance and Glacial Spike if you talent into it. And does a huge chunk of damage. You can generate it with your whole rotation and then spend it pretty easily. It allows you to get those, like that Shatter mechanic, without worrying about them always being rooted or frozen or something. So you can still do like a rotation even if the CC is not landing or is DR'd or something similar, or if they have like root immunity or root protection or root breaks at the time. So you can still get that Shatter combo off. Feels like it does a huge chunk of damage. It does allow you to spam Flurry and then Ice Lance and then Flurry and then Ice Lance for a nice instant cast rotation. Combine that with Frozen Orb, and you have a ton of on-demand damage as a caster, which is really nice. You don't really have to worry about the getting kicked on everything. You do have multiple schools for CC and damage, and if you do bait out a lot of kicks or land a precog, then, well, if precogs is still in the game, but you can bait out kicks one way or another or get a ton of distance. You can throw out that Glacial Spike for massive finishing power. So, I'm even going to put it over. I have really high hopes for Frost Mage. I hope I'm not over-representing that, but when I played it, which I did, it feels really good. Could be a victim of the secondary stat scaling, but I'm not going to put all casters lower secondary stats in the season, like I've said 40 times. I'm not going to put all casters in C tier. That would be really stupid and a bad prediction. So I'm going to hope that it pulls through. Fire Mage, on the other hand, I think is very, very bad. Again, I talked about this in the BG Blitz video, and nobody said I was missing anything. And I talked about this in my most prudent video, and nobody said I was missing anything. So it's apparent that I'm not missing anything. Fire Mage lost Phoenix Flames, got absolutely nothing in return, and its rotation is 3 buttons, and one of them is a slow cast Fireball when you have no secondary stats in Season 1 that does seemingly not that oppressive damage in PvP. Like, again, most casters at this point have moved off casting. Like, I know I've been talking about that. Like, you certainly do cast things. Aflock has UA, you know, all of these things. But there's a lot of casters that are just like, nope, instant cast everything. You know, I'm gonna surge you from across the map, something like that. Of course, the new Devourer spec. So it's kind of crazy to move Fire Mage off of that, where they had 6 charges of Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames between them, and into a cast, and it just doesn't feel like it does enough to warrant that. So they're going to have to put on, and actually they might do this. So if they do this, they might have to put on this crazy Fireball PvP mod. Like, we're talking 300% or something. I have no idea. And just make it old fire, where your Fireball hits really hard if you can get it off, and it puts on a huge ignite on them, and that's really good single target damage. If they do that, then yeah, I mean, hey, look, you can make anything. You could say Fireball does 2 billion damage. There, fire's good now. I just changed it. So again, tuning has a chance to make this spec good, but currently what they lost, shifting power to reset all of their 6 charges of instant cast, and now they only have 3 charges and no shifting power. What on earth? I'm not super high on Fire Mage. I could be totally wrong. Finally, we have a healer in S tier, Mistweaver. Great mobility, great self-sustain, great CC still. Not as good as our Druid, but the throughput absolutely is. I have played against them, so again, this could be a tuning thing. This is one where unfortunately it could backfire, because they could just get nerfed to everything, and then it's like maybe they didn't have quite the toolkit that our Druid had, and they're just overall worse. But right now, Mistweaver's throughput, self-sustain, and ability to make their team immortal with gigantic cocoons into massive hots. Now, here's one of the things, another new thing, so I'm not just saying words at you, but they have a talent that makes Renewing Mist heal for 500% more on the lowest health enemy. So it's a huge hot buff with smart healing, because it grabs the lowest health enemy, which is ally, you know what I mean? The lowest health ally that needs it the most, right? So that is a fantastic way of getting, it's kind of like the Riptide with our Shaman Mastery, how the lower they get, the more likely they are to be targeted by this massive rebound heal. And since it's a hot that they can apply very easily, that means if the pacing slows down enough, every time you get them low, they're going to come back up, low, come back up, and then they have Cocoon and Revival as major impactful cooldowns to make sure they get through the burst period. And then when you go to sustain, they've got their 500% Renewing Mist heal. And then you go back to burst and they've got Cocoon back, right? So if you have an answer for both types of damage, good mobility, good CC, good self-sustain so they can't swap to you, port so they can't swap to you, Revival immunity is still always going to be good. That's good. That all the things that I just, vomited out of the mouth were all good. So I'd have to give Mistweaver the nod. Of course, they could mess up my prediction with tuning, but so be it. Windwalker is another one. I generally rate melee higher than casters in Season 1s, which hasn't failed me yet, I don't think, because of the secondary stats conundrum, which I won't force you to hear a 15th time. Windwalker gets another benefit, though. It gets a cooldown change from Storm, Earth, and Fire to Zenith, which means instead of clones, you just have a damage mod, and also like chi reduction and other things that allows you to get your burst off quicker. What is really, really, really good about that is Storm, Earth, and Fire was susceptible to getting CC'd by the vast amounts of spam CC's. Roots were very problematic for them. Any AoE disorient or anything that just pseudos them cuts out so much of your clone's damage. So when you split up into 3, you could actually be harming yourself, which is not something that you want out off of an offensive cooldown, right? But that's no longer the case. So Zenith changes that, and in a big way. So if it still has that Mortal Strike and mobility and spike damage and 100 to 0 in stuns, and now it can do it all in a much more difficult to peel, much more tuned for solo shuffle or 3s environment. When people are trying to disrupt your damage, what are they going to do? Both 3s and solo shuffle, this is all the same, right? They're going to try and pseudo CCU, and that was very debilitating for Storm Earth, and now it is not. So they still have all of the toolkit that makes Windwalker scary to play against. I know one of you have gotten 100 to 0 by a Windwalker at some point in this game's history, and now they have a better way of doing that. So watch out for Windwalker, I would say. H-Pal is another S-tier healer, but I am piggybacking off of what I've seen some H-Pals say. It feels like the ones that are non-biased say they have a lot of cooldowns. They have double infusion of light, which is really good because in a season 1, when again, you don't have much secondary stats to get casts off, it's really nice to have instant cast healing. That's what infusion of light does. It allows you to cast instant cast flash of light, giving you big holy power gen, which is then going into your word of glory, which is also an instant cast. And you have this nice double infusion to get, you can infusion wog, or you can double infusion. And then, right. So you have a lot of ways of getting instant casts off. You have good cooldowns to rotate. You've always had good cooldowns. You have sack and bop and spell bop. You can still have Searing Glare that you have to sacrifice blinding light for it. You lost your kick, but out of all the healers, that losing a kick hurts the least, I would say. Maybe it's H-Pal, because sometimes they didn't want to be, in the middle of the map for one kick and then get swapped to an 100 to 0 to H-Pal. Sometimes has a weakness of being easy to swap to. I'm not certain that's the case right now. They've got their hero talents that still allow them to play a more defensive playstyle if they so choose. And they're only getting more of those as you level up to 90. You get to add more hero talents and more talents. And it just feels like they have a lot of utility that they've always had, as well as now some cooldown based and instant cast based throughput, which is very, very good, especially in solo shuffle. They have one more tool that I wanted to talk about where they have, this is a mechanic that HBL has where you can choose a talent where a portion of their heals from WOG or either Holy Light or Flash of Light something gives them 15% absorb shield. 15% of that heal is converted to an absorb shield, which is really good because a lot of the times you can overheal in PvP and in PvE, but we're talking about PvP, and then you get a shield, and so it's not, the heal isn't entirely wasted because now you get a shield that helps prevent against future damage. So every single time you were going to overheal, now it's actually benefiting you, allowing you to keep people stable and more aggressive. People love to play aggressive when their health bars are full, so the more of that you keep, the more your teammates, especially in solo shuffle when there's no communication, right, the more your teammates are going to play aggressive and try and win you the game, which again, in solo shuffle, keeping your teammates aggressive is your best way to win because no comms. So I said that 3 different ways. I hope it makes sense. But yeah, HPAL looking good. Boy. Red is a melee, and it's a melee with ranged abilities. So how about A-Tier? It got pruned, but that doesn't really change its value, right? Again, the Searing Glare replacing Blinding Light is something where you can't have a ton of CC and Searing Glare. You have to choose one or the other. You still have ranged output, you still have ranged burst, you still have wings every single time you press wake, you still have passive Crusader Strike, just filling up your holy power for free. You still have phenomenal utility with, your spell bop and your sank. You can bubble on for Barrens, you've got your lay on hands. You have all of these tools that have made Ret good in every shuffle for the longest time. So I don't see a reason with, again, Season 1's being predominantly owned by Melee that any of the changes that happened to them would be too disruptive. Again, they did get some things pruned and now Judgment turns into Hammer of Wrath. I think with low secondary stats, they might have their rotation stall out for a little bit because Judgment turns into Hammer of Wrath is what I was trying to say during Wings. So they're not 2 separate buttons. So losing some buttons to press, maybe losing some haste for some cooldown reduction is going to be something of a rotational problem, but I don't really see it. I think as long as they have that short cooldown Wings and Wake kind of phenomenon where they can always do their types of damage that they want and then use their immunities and their full heal to get people to latent dampening where their damage really shines, and then bubble to finish a kill. That all sounds really good to me. So I think they'll still be good. Disc, I have struggled to rate. And I've looked at some other tier lists for inspiration, and I don't know if everybody feels like they are, I don't want to say it again, but I have to. Low secondary stats means the Void Weaver engine is not as good, right? Because you need to ramp up that snowball very quickly. You're not healing people, you're doing damage to heal people. But if you can't get into that very quickly, you might be in some trouble because then you're going to fall behind, and then doing damage for small sustained healing is not going to feel as good as while you do it while you're ahead. Void Weaver is something that loves to be ahead, and taking a while to get your engine going is trouble. But they have another hero talent. It's Oracle. And Oracle did seem like with big shields and putting emphasis into your healing buttons instead of your damage buttons, you still had a good setup for Disc. But You know, they don't have spammable CC like Cyclone. They don't have absurd throughput like Mistweaver. Let's put it at the top of B tier. Let's just do that. Or maybe even the bottom of A tier. Let's put it here because we know it's not worse than those other specs so I have to make sure I put it in the right spot. I could move it to the bottom of A tier. Shields are good, and Paints Up is always going to be good in solo shuff because it's not affected by dampening. But I just worry that losing the ability to do the disc thing, which is damage into healing, and then just going full into Oracle, and then just not having the throughput of the other healers anyway, so what's the point, is going to feel a little bad. That's it. And sometimes it doesn't have a setup for its fear, right? A lot of healers now, especially like, this has NS Clone. It's a PvP talent that gives you NS Clone, but increases the cooldown. This has Para Song, right? Sweep. Prez has Wall for its Sleepwalk, so it can wall cast Sleepwalk. And then Holy Priest has Chastise Fear, but this doesn't have Chastise. So it has to get fear off of other things. And in the chaos of solo shuffle, sometimes that's not happening. So high B, but I'm worried. Right above that, we'll just put Holy. It got hella pruned. But some of the things that it lost, I mean, they're not. Like Shadow Word Pain is a loss, and that's silly, but it's not like you were winning games off of Shadow Word Pain, I don't think. You know, having a little bit of extra damage is fine. Nothing crazy, especially since you don't have Atonement. Again, prune-wise, holy crap, Holy Priest got the short end of the stick, but it should still have cooldown-based healing. It has Chastise Fear. It has Fade. It doesn't have Ray of Hope anymore. That's a big cooldown. I don't know. What do we think between Disc and Holy Priest? Goodness gracious. This one is going to be so hard. I feel like no matter which way I go, I'm going to be wrong. It's less susceptible to CC, but it doesn't have the good defensive of Paints Up. It lost Ray of Hope, right? I'm not daydreaming that. I didn't make that up. Its throughput is better, but then it gets destroyed by dampening. The pacing might lead more things into dampening. Let's just say it's worse. Let's just say it's worse because it might get owned by dampening. It's full on healing output, so dampening really starts to struggle. No Iron Bark, doesn't have the crazy cooldowns of Mistweaver. Let's just keep it here. All right, right in the middle of the pack, right? Yikes, that one was hard. Shadow Priest lost Stun and Void Swap, so that looks bad. I'm not going to put it all the way at the bottom of B, but it still has really, really good damage. And silence. Losing Stun and Void Swap are big deals. It can't set up its own fear quite as easily or at all. It doesn't have a fantastic self or team utility button and swap. It does have a good damage profile, but that will benefit from secondary stats. So maybe right in the middle of B tier is a fine place for it. It does still have that AoE Void Horrify thing that's really tough to deal with, and it has Rot Pressure. I'll put it at B. That one's hard. I think that one's hard. I think Assassination Rogue got gutted. It was so oppressive. I'll put it at the top of C tier, but it was so oppressive when it had triple Garrote, and now Kingsbane feels underwhelming, and you lost your Serrated Bone Spike. You do not have triple silence. You don't have ease of applying dots to multiple players. You have to put a Garrote on them and then Crimson Tempest spread it. Same with Rupture. To get it on multiple targets. And if you get pseudoed and then they spread out, you can't get your Crimson Tempest spread. Again, you know, you had this debilitating triple silence mechanic that is now no longer in the game. AoE silence, rather. It's still Assassination Rogue. It still has Shiv. For a big MS, but it just feels power crept a little bit, and its damage profile feels very underwhelming. Kingsbane doesn't seem to do much, and we'll see if, as you know, more games are played with that new capstone, the definitive capstone, whatever you call that thing at the very bottom, because that buffs Kingsbane. We'll see if it gets some love from that, but otherwise, right now, Assassin's feeling a little underwhelming to me. It plays the 4 poison thing again, but it just does not feel like a huge contributor to their damage. So maybe some decent utility out of that, but nothing crazy. Outlaw just got a massive buff to, hello, can I move this? to all of its damage because it was underperforming so hard, but I still think having all physical damage is really weak in PvP. And losing the fact that it can cheap an entire team by only having 2 charges of cheap, I think hurts it more than sub, which is crazy, but that's because sub has the damage profile to win in those 2 cheaps, and I don't think outlaw does. Preparation being a full offensive cooldown reset is crazy, but again, its offensive cooldowns are making it do 20% more than 0 dam, which feels like 0 dam still. It just does not ever have like crazy output in PvP, and I think it always relies on that control toolkit. It still has the, it's still rogue. It's got double cheap blind, it's got gouge, it's got some crazy mobility, but those things I feel like they matter way more in a battleground environment than an arena, and I have not seen them rated highly on any other tier list, so I'm going to go with C tier. I don't have the highest hopes for outlaw, but maybe just because it's a rogue and it's got more control than, I'm just going to keep it where it is. It's fine. As long as I can. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Then sub is S tier. It's very interesting, and I think they're allowed to do this now. Since sub can't dance and cheap your entire team 3 times each to 9 total cheaps and triple DR in their entire team, it's allowed to have single target damage again, is what I think they believe. Because you don't have Rupture, you don't have Infinity cheap, so you really just have to make sure your output, your single target output is high. Otherwise, it literally has nothing, right? It doesn't have very many abilities. Gormaz is not crazy. So they're going to make Eviscerate do a lot of damage, which is currently what they've done. So I think sub will stay giving 100 to 0 threats the entire expansion because they can't really do anything else with it. I mean, it doesn't really have much of a toolkit otherwise. Honestly, that's pretty sad. And I talked about sub in my most pruned specs video, but it is what it is. I didn't do it. And I think that sub is going to have, again, 100 to 0 pressure the entire expansion as a result. Now, maybe as health pools get really high toward the end of expansion, sub's one shot won't keep up, and then it feels like a meaningless spec because it lost all of that other interesting utility and crowd control, but it's still a rogue spec, so it has triple sap blind, and it can sap out of blind if you can get them to drop combat. So you just have to do the blind like 2 seconds before, or 2 seconds after they stopped casting something, and you blind them and you sap out. The other specs don't have dance, so they don't have that option. They can vanish for it, but sub can do it pretty much all the time because sub also has vanish and they have shadow dance, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so they're a rogue and they have single target damage, and they're the best at doing that out of the 3 rogue specs. So bada bing, S tier. Ellie, I think, is C. Got pruned heavily. It still has the meatball sauce. Scary. Another casualty of secondary stats. It really, really, really wants the haste to make sure its engine can go, especially with some of the pruning. I feel like it could be susceptible to... No, I'm going to put it in B tier. The C tier feels too low. I think it's susceptible to getting trained. I think its utility is good, though, and it could still maybe pop somebody with, like, the Ascendance. It lost the Prim Wave, too, didn't it? It got pruned on a lot of things. It got Stormkeeper, but it just doesn't feel like Stormkeeper does anything, and I'm certain there's still a PvP mod on that whole Stormkeeper Lightning Bolt engine. So it's very possible that some of the things that made them great got pruned, and then the things that are left have negative PvP mods, and the Meatball engine requires more haste. So it's just like they have a lot of things that are dragging them down right now. They might get trained. If they can't get casts off, that's scary because, again, they might not have the haste to make everything instant cast, blah, blah, blah. Their utility is fine, but not crazy. Their mobility is limited. I think this is probably their CC is limited. I think this is probably a fine spot for them. Hex is a good button, but Enhance would probably be in this tier, but much higher. Hard to see with Enhance. It always struggles from its lack of Mortal Strike, maybe spammable CC, grinder damage. It's more like all in and then kind of lowers its damage. It self-sustains very well, and I think they buffed Healing Surge again. So I think its self-sustain is going to be very, very good with that PvP talent that gives it. The Maelstrom turns its Healing Surge. You spend Maelstrom and then you get all of that value onto Healing Surge as well. That PvP talent that's allowed them to keep their damage and their healing rather than having to sacrifice one or the other. They have some new stuff going on in the capstones, but I think it's mostly reordering and then also baking one effect into another. Like Doom Winds can be a proc. Ascendance replaces Doom Winds, but you can get Doom Winds procs during Ascendance, which is their one-shot mechanic. So they still have that Ascendance, Doom Winds, Thorum's Invocation, like all of their damage front loaded into one ranged explosion. And hence, over the last 2 expansion has, flirted with some single target sustain builds as well, while being really, really tanky, taking every solo shuffle to super dampening and then just grinding out a kill. But I don't think it was overwhelmingly oppressive in any of those seasons. I think it was good. And in the right hands, it was very good. But I don't see anything changing that keeps it up with some of these, grinder melee that have more tools. Could be very wrong on that one. Very hard to predict enhance. Our Shaman wants mastery. So until it has that, I'll put it at the top, the very top of B. Our Shaman is a mastery-loving spec since the day it was born. It's just mastery is so, so good because it's perfectly tuned for a PvP environment where the lower health they are, the more healing they get. If the pacing slows down enough, which it generally does by the time our Shaman gets really, really good, then every single time somebody gets low, you top them. They get low, you top them, you get low. They get low, you top them. And that allows you to keep the game going until dampening, and you heal it better than anybody else because your healing just gets stronger and stronger the lower people are stuck at. So you're just constantly getting that mastery buff, allowing you to extend games long enough for your team to kill them. That's the idea with our Shaman. It got some pruning, but it actually still has a remarkable toolkit because it kept its shear. It still has some damage output. It has Purge. It has Hex. It has Lasso. It has Cling. It has NS Hex now from that PvP talent. Same thing as our Druid, where you increase the cooldown of NS, but you can get an NS Hex, which could end a game if they have no Trinket. You put them on an off DR full 6-second CC. Wow, that's really good, but its throughput might not be as crazy as the other healers that also have a lot of tools like that. Again, our Druid has all the same things, NS Clone and a multiple spammable clone. And Mistweaver's just got the greatest cooldowns and throughput that I've seen this expansion so far. So until it's got that 150% mastery that it rocks at the end of every expansion, well, more like 110%, but you know what I mean. I'm not sure I would put it all the way up there, but the very top of B tier, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, then maybe it's like the middle of A tier, low A tier, but I could do this. Let's just do it. Look how it looked. They're even, man. It's a sign. Except they're not going to be because now I'm going to put Aflock in A tier. I'm going to put it at the bottom of A tier because of Mr. Broken Record saying secondary stats for the 50th time. But that's true. Lock has always been a spec that relies on those. That said, the Aflock design is really, really neat. It's now back to the stackable UAs. It's got the AoE dot pressure, and it's got the Wither mechanic and the Malevolence thing that allows you to get these cool ramping, like the old Necrotic Plague from Unholy, these cool ramping dots, and then you can funnel in even more rot pressure by stacking 4 or 5 UAs on the guy you're trying to kill, which gives you big dispel protection and helps. You could swap that rod around and keep targeting people that have that don't have a defensive active or have no defensive left, and eventually it's going to become overwhelming. I really, really like that design. I hope they're a bottom of A tier because I'm sure they'll be S tier in the end of the expansion. But it's just so neat to have, ramping dots with a 15 stack Wither and then single target dots that really amplify the pressure on one target by getting a 1 UA, 2 UA. Oh my God, I got 3 UAs. We got 4 UAs, CC the healer, get your Immortal Strike effect on this guy, max damage. He's going to rot to death. It's unhealable, blah, blah, blah. That's just such a cool design. In an expansion where some things got over pruned, I love that some things actually retained or even somehow increased a little bit of complexity here and there. So Aflock, very cool and seeming to be powerful. Demo, I don't think, relies on the secondary stats for a caster at all, so I can finally not say that is a problem. Maybe I should even probably put it over some of these. Oh, I should. I don't know. Hard to tell once you're all up in this S tier, but I looked at the new talents. They look very oppressive. Certain things like having Vile Fiend be baked into instant cast Dreadstalkers. That's a lot of things that I just said. So now you have instant cast Dreadstalkers that bake in yet another button. So you save a global and a cast time, allowing you to instantly get pressure out. And we see all of the pet classes that are very difficult to deal with in solo shuffle have come to the top as they generally pressure well and get kills in solo shuffle, and you can't take that damage off you. Well, Demo is no exception with the Axe Toss and the spammable Fear. Decent PvP talents, and that Fell Lord is still going to be pretty nice to AoE stun these melee off of you. You have good self-survivability with the Pact and the Wall and the Port and all of that goodies. and the new talents that bake a lot of things into a few buttons and really amp up those burst cooldowns with more Legion. Just take a look at their talents. The flavor is all there. You're gonna have a billion pets. They're all streamlined in a few button presses, and it's gonna be very difficult for people to deal with. Every time demo is good, people do tend to get frustrated playing against it. The one thing that it might have a problem with is if it's a hella melee meta, like even more than I've said, especially like on Holy Hunter again, then those classes will train the demo, and then I would push them down a tier. But we'll see. We'll see. Speaking of melee, well, let's do Destro first. I have no idea where to put this. I'm going to be honest with you. What was the new thing they got? They have Soulfire synergy talents now. I wonder if those are going to be good. Like one of them summons this big cool pet guy from the Burning Crusade. They have some Soulfire mods. I'm saying we're going to put him at the top of B tier. I'm saying that Destro is going to be a casualty of secondary stats. I feel like they really want to get casts off, especially with some of their new capstones. But maybe they have a lot of instant cast generators still. They do have the Conflag Shadowburn combo. Oh my god, I never know how to do lock, bro. I'm going to put a lock in each tier and just call it good. Demo, Af, Destro. And call it Fate or something. Destro is so hard to rate. I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a cop-out because finally at the end of this 1 hour video, there's a spec that I just don't believe that I can even guess on. So please, just somebody in the comments tell me where Destro should be. There's a lot of freaking specs in this game, man. Arms Warrior, I'm also going to put highest B tier because I think people are underrating this one. I think that new Heroic Strike capstone gives them a ton of upfront damage. I think early in the expansion, they might be a little tankier, and they might be a little less susceptible to rot with people, again, having less secondary stats and not being able to rot them as hard. I can't say that again. Holy cow. But you guys are going to be hearing that in your sleep. But their Heroic Strike on-demand damage is good. They can camp D-stance. They've still got decent mobility. The PvP talents that they have to select from are ridiculous. They have so many different options. They got you good utility and great CC. You know, with a lot of classes losing CC, especially rogues not having 15 cheap shots, you know, having Stormbolt, Shockwave would be really useful. Fear is a great button press, and a lot of classes cannot get out of it since it is a physical fear. No dispel there, of course. But I won't put it as high as Fury Warrior, which I believe specifically in a solo shuffle is going to be a menace. Not a S-tier menace, but a menace to play against. And it's all because of that one new talent, which I believe if you've looked at Fury, you know exactly what I'm going to say. It's that too angry to die kind of talent that Fury has going on now. Kill or be killed, I think it's called. Where if you die, you come back to life. You have 8 seconds of immortality and movement speed impairment immunity, or movement impairment immunity. So that might be roots as well. And you can just play the game for 8 more seconds, try and get a kill. And if you do, you're back to life. And if you do in a solo shuffle, you win that round because you come back to life and they do not. So what's crazy about that is I feel like that's going to be on this bell curve, right? Where new players are going to say, that's so broken. Oh my God, they can just come back to life and kill me. It's so broken. Then better players are going to say, dude, just like use your walls and CC them and get away. Like maybe you can't root them, but you could probably stun them. And then, or just, you know, kite, take a gateway, something, and in 8 seconds they lose the game. Boo-hoo, not that hard. And then I think even better than that will be the idea that, hey, solo shuffle rounds are notoriously panic-inducing, you know, hectic, chaotic at the end when somebody dies. Because the reason somebody generally dies in solo shuffle, unless they just get popped in the opener, you guys have a perfect CC chain, is the alternative win condition, which is dampening is ramping up and you're running out of cooldowns, right? So how many solo shuffles have you guys played where it comes down to one person dying and the other person was at 20% health, and you're like, oh, thank God, I had literally nothing left for that guy. Thank God we won there. How many? I've said that on stream. Oh, thank God we won there. We had no chance after that, right? So if Fury is supposed to be the target in that situation, because maybe he doesn't have wall or anything, now you're screwed. Because if he's the one with the lowest health and he dies, then your guy who's 30% health is all of a sudden going to have a Fury Warrior chasing him across the ends of the earth because he knows that I can overextend. I can do whatever I want because I have exactly 8 seconds to get a kill. It doesn't matter if I leap behind a pillar. It doesn't matter if I charge into Narnia. It doesn't matter anything. I have 8 seconds. I got to get this kill. And they can't because it's super late dampening and you have no defensive. That's the whole point that I'm trying to say here. So there's going to be a lot of times where, as always in a solo shuffle round, you narrowly get the victory and then it's like, oh wait, that's a Fury Warrior. No, we don't. And then he gets the kill and you lose the round. There's another situation that can occur. Let's say, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't be killing the Fury Warrior. One, having a target never be a target is a problem, and that makes the spec really good because they can play as aggressively as they want. But let's say you do avoid making the Fury Warrior a target, and you're trying to kill his teammate, but he sees an opportunity. He has every offensive cooldown come back up. He's still got these cool things. Like, let me talk about, so he's got the Reckless Abandon, upgraded Raging Blow. He's got, Blade Storm with the Blade Storm modifier that gives them a huge rampage at the end of it from the hero talents, and Slayer, I think it is. So a lot of really cool stuff there. Anyway, so he's got all those offensive cooldowns coming back up, and he jumps behind a pillar. Generally, that's a death sentence, and your best way to answer that is by everybody turning on him. He can't be healed behind a pillar. The healer's like 50 yards out of range going, what the heck are you doing, man? And you kill him before he kills you, and that's your way to win. Now, he can say, I've got every offensive cooldown. I'm going to leap Stormbolt this guy behind a pillar, pop everything on him. We're both 50%. I die because I'm alone, but he's also dying, and I know that my offensive cooldowns are still going to be going while I have 8 seconds to kill this guy. And you have this win condition where you could just late damp, dive behind pillar, win us the game, right? I don't know. I think the other example is probably even more strong a case, but if people are doing that, that's going to get old really quick. So right in the middle of A tier, and that's my list. That was supremely difficult. The more classes and specs they add to this game, bro, these get so hard. Guys, if you have anything, any advice, any ideas, any strategies you've come up with, something I underrated, something I overrated, something that I totally missed, a new ability, a new spell, a new utility button, a new PvP talent that they added that I did not take into consideration, tell me in the comments below. Holy crap, this was hard. We'll do a re-review come in Midnight Season 1 and see if I got any of this right. Thank you so much for watching. My voice hurts. I'll see you in the next video.